affordable living is where the majority of your income that you get, you should be able to afford paying rent and those essential things that are essential for you to sustain yourself. And it's relative. I mean, it really depends on, you know, what city you live in or what part of the state you live in. But here in New York, what's happening is the data's showing that people are spending over 60-70% of their gross income on housing.
It's supposed to be something like 25 or 30.
Yes,
Yeah.
30 cents. Yeah,
30. Yeah.
And so, thank you.
Yeah.
So realistically, the standard for affordable living is different in each development or in each community. And most of the times it's fashioned between 40 and 55,000 people, or what you make per year. 40 and 55,000, you should be able to qualify. So this is what I meant by requirements. Making between that ensures that you will get qualified for affordable living. Now, how many?
Housing.
Yeah, affordable housing. Sorry, what did I say? Affordable living, right? Sorry, affordable housing. But how many people know about minimum wage?
Yep.
Minimum wage, you make at most $28,000 a year. At most. That's not affordable living if you're going according to requirements. So why did we term it affordable living? Well, it's simple. Because we want to show people coming into New York City that you can afford to live here. You thought we were expensive, wait till you come here, then you'll know. But until you don't live here, it's affordable in your eyes, meaning the sight of the word affordable living or affordable housing is in the sight, and then when you get here, it's a totally different story. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say too that a lot of these gentrified buildings and these luxury condos that are in every borough, I mean it's happening in every borough, it's happening in Brooklyn, many of them are not even being bought by real people. They're being bought by foreign investment, and they're unoccupied. And the city knows this, and and they're allowing it because
they get the cut.
They get the cut. They get the cut. And De Blasio has been doing this in Brooklyn since he was our city council. He was my city council person for 12 years before he was public advocate and before he was mayor, and we fought him every step of the way. But that's how he built his war chest. It's, you know, that's the pay-to-play system of politics.
Yes.
That's you know, if you can amass enough money, doesn't matter who it's from, you know you can win, and that's what the Greens want to get rid of. That
And
system.
let's clarify something, because I'm glad you brought that up. To win any public servant position in New York City does not require money. It doesn't. Now, you need to advertise yourself. So of course, in that aspect, you need money unless somebody's going to do you a favor. And then that's contingent, because the campaign finance board says favors are called in-kind donations. So if you guys can donate 6 hours of your time a week, 4 hours of your time a week, 9 hours, whatever hours you can donate is called in-favor donations, or in-kind donations. And so they say you can only in-kind donate to a certain amount of money. So how much do you pay your volunteers, volunteers, or your staff? Say it's $15 an hour. Well, then they can only donate up until $4,500, remember? And so, so the threshold that any person in New York can donate at the max is $4,950. Am I correct?
Yeah.
Something like that.
And so, you can donate your time, but only up until $4,950. Now, the bad thing is, like I said, I started that there's no money required. You don't have to raise a certain amount of money to win. You need people's action to vote to win. Like I explained to you, at the end of the day, by November 6, 12 p.m., your account has to be zeroed out. So the $15 million plus that De Blasio and every other Democrat and Republican that raised these monies, they have to zero out your money. This is your money that you have to hurry up and spend, because the people that work hard every day, going to work 2 jobs a day to feed their family of 4, 2, 1, or just themselves, we make this money just so you can have advertisement. So it doesn't actually fit what New Yorkers want. But that's where I'm bringing to you next. What is it that not New Yorkers want, but what is it that society needs? Society. And then let's deal with what do we want as New Yorkers. Now, society needs to feel safe. There's people in New York that's banking on Akeem Browder running and winning for mayor because, as my sister, she's married to a Mexican man who's legitimately here. Her father, who has a house out in New York, in Queens, New York, her father has lived there for 32 years. And yet, just so happened this year, a little after my mom passed, her father-in-law hasn't lived at that house because ICE is always at her door or his door. And so there's people that's scared to even walk in the streets in Pelham Parkway in the Bronx because they're using that as a concentration camp area because ICE knows in that area of the Bronx we have a mass influxion of undocumented. And so since they're there, as soon as you get off the 12 bus, be warned, there's ICE right there at the doorstep. You come out the day, they're looking for IDs, or did you, so they have to have a reasonable, a reason for stopping you. That's not true. They just stop for any reason. And if you're Mexican, you're getting stopped. And so, or if you're Hispanic of any descent, and that's all of Pelham Bay. So they gotta let people get out, or force people to get out, so that they can bring in the people that they want, which is not us. The ones that built New York, we built our train systems, we built our buildings, and Black Wall Street was us, and yet we're being forced to get out because of papers. So we need society safety. How do you get safety? Any clue? I'm actually asking because I want to know how to.
We don't have a militarized police system, that's for sure.
Thank you. So, police in New York have a problem with not being police as community advocates or people that can steer a community into safety. They're looking at it as a war zone. They're the guerrillas and we are the flock, or they're the watchdog, and yet it's not supposed to be that way. They're not there to over-police us. They're supposed to aid in the community. And so how do you get them, how do we get back to there though? How do we get back to safety in our society is by getting what happened when I was growing up. We had grandma in the building. As soon as I crossed the street, because they knew we weren't supposed to cross the street because our parents was real strict, that phone was ringing, but my ball went in the street. So I'm running in the street, that phone rang because grandma's in the building. I'm telling. I mean, it's called community policing. We need community policing. Grandma needs to be back in that window, but she needs to be able to afford the rent to be in that window. But everything works as a whole. We can't have grandma in the window yelling at kids because then kids know that they can go to the police and say that she was harassing and she gets arrested because she owns that building or that house that she lives in, that she's in the window harassing or so-called harassing. And then the police would then arrest her because they know, oh, to get her out the community so that we can own that building or so that somebody else can move in that's more favorable. We then fine them or subpoena them or put their house up. And now we get them out the neighborhood. New York has been targeting New Yorkers and we are their base. So what we need a New York that's better for New Yorkers. And just so you know, I didn't say citizens. I didn't say citizens for a reason because I don't want to victimize or leave anyone out. That means trans individuals. That means those that's undocumented. That means blacks. That means poor. I mean, right now, poor people in New York cannot vote. Not poor. Homeless people in New York can't vote for us. Or for anybody. Not for us only. They can't vote for anyone because they don't have a technical house, an address that's theirs. And yet, we can take taxes from them. It's not fair. Let's talk about now solutionizing, because I'm going to just throw away that thought that like we're only talking about the problems. Let's solutionize. Let's get optimistic about what New York could really look like. So I dare tackle the challenge of MTA, because that is a problem in New York. MTA. Sorry, brother.
Sorry. I only work there. I don't run it.
It's him. This is how we know he's not joking. No, he's a good brother, first of all. But I have a vision for what New York has for New York, and New York has, the Green Party has for New York's MTA system. And I have my vision as well. So we have the platform of the Green Party that backs understanding about how we get New York ecologically better for us. Because if you look at, if you drive, you guys drive, you drive. Our streets are overpopulated with cars. We don't make enough bike lanes to sustain our ecological system when it comes to our air. I mean, we're overpolluted with CO2 in our atmosphere, and we don't help it by having overhead train systems that break with mercury. I mean, our brakes are made with mercury. And so when you have a train station in the Bronx and you're walking under that train station and a train comes by, you're breathing in mercury. Mercury is a killer to our blood. And so it's poisoning. And yet we doing this, and who lives under these train stations? The poor communities. Why you think in Manhattan, we have the trains underground? Because they don't, not because that's air pollution, but what about the noise pollution? You can't sleep at night with a train coming through every 10 minutes, if it actually runs every 10 minutes.
The rent is cheap.
And it's not, actually, because
Well, it's cheaper.
it's cheaper.
For New York.
Yeah, for New York, yeah. But, I mean, getting to a better place is, we have the ability, because JFK's done it, with the
Monorail.
The monorail. I used to work for JFK. I know the technology that they have at JFK, and I'm like, wait, this is sustainable. It's affordable, if anything. And I mean affordable because we pay into MTA. So how come we don't get a cut from MTA since we paid? Instead, we get a cut. We get cut and sent to jail when we hop the turnstile. And yet, is that our fault? We have to get to work.
I just want to say something to MTA. I mean, we pay taxes twice, plus we pay user fee. We pay taxes into the MTA, plus we were paying just on top of that. And a lot of that money is not going back into the MTA. A lot of this money is being is going to loans.
Yes.
That's being handled by Goldman Sachs and a lot of the big Wall Street hedge funds. In fact, that's going to be the biggest percentage in, I think just in the 3 years, that's going to be the biggest percentage of the money that we give to MTA. It's going to be on service fees for these so-called bonds, right? Or the service fee for the borrowing of money for MTA, you know. And I think one part of it is that we should do two parts. Start a state bank for the MTA.
Yes.
And maybe have the MTA that is owned by the workers, by the MTA workers.
And that's,
you know?
Cooperative.
Cooperative. Yeah.
So I actually came out with a solution just like this. So if you want to see our proposals for what we want to do with the Green Party, I want to open it up to everyone. So please do write us at my email, which is akimbrowder2017@gmail, so that we can then send you emails of this. You can also check it out when we upload it on our website, which it hasn't been yet, but we're going to upload it, where we have thoughts for where New Yorkers are failing when it comes to our vulnerable, like we have to pay to use the train system when we already pay and through our taxes. So we want to come up with a Bill of Rights and legislation that gives New Yorkers free Metro cards under the welfare system itself. And so that initiative is easily done. I sit on New York's finance committee, so I know where the money is in New York. And once a month, every month, I complain at the fact that why is it that we have reserves of $250 million? We could be giving that as transportation for people, since they pay into this. And then we won't have the problem of theft of service, where kids can hop the turnstile and then go to jail because they didn't pay $275. Makes no sense. And then we're raising that next year since the new bills got passed. So we're gonna still have to hop the turnstile on a more frequent basis, which then floods this, the Department of Corrections. I mean, we don't only have the school to prison pipeline system, but we have every other pipeline feeding the CCA, the Corrections Corporations of America. And yet, these are corporations, that means it's for profit. How are our bodies for profit? Well, slave work is it's a literal market. And so what they invest in is our black bodies, because what you don't know, for those of you watching and those of you here, what you don't know is that, say a prison like 5 Points Correctional Facility, that's in New York State, upstate New York. It's a part of the Department of Corrections overseen by only the DOCS. And 5 Points makes Victoria's Secret. Did you not know? So if you're wearing it, realistically, you're wearing something that a person in prison made. Anything public, anything that you see in the public spectrum, when it comes to our lights that tell you to go and stop, or halt, or slow down, those are corrections made. Our license plate. We joke around when we, back in the day, license plate people make it in jail. That's not all they make. They make our public park benches. You know, the new initiatives, put garbage cans. Well, that's another thing we need in New York. But that means we need correction or prison inmates to make these garbage cans at a higher rate than. That is a joke, because realistically, that's slave labor. Yes, we need garbage cans, but why do we have to make it through 7 cents an hour or 27 cents an hour when we can give a job to someone on the streets of New York for 15 an hour? It's not the pay-to-play system that we have now, and that's why I want to change it. I'm going to turn it over to Charles. I'm sorry, Charles.
Okay, no, not a problem. Not a problem. All right, everybody give Brother Browder. He's giving. Hopefully he's giving you some insight into what we're about. And so now today I'm going to talk about how we plan to execute. How we plan to execute. Here's a number that I want you to think in your mind. 2 million. 2 million. That's the number. 2 million. Those are the impressions we would like to make with respect to New York City. New York City has approximately 8.3 million people in the city, and we want to make an impression on 2 million of those people. Those 2 million people who will go and cast their vote on November the 7th. That's what we want to do. Now, here's another number to share with you. 323,000. 323,000. That is the number of Democrats who voted for Mayor de Blasio this past primary. Okay? 323,000. Okay?
Very small.
Yeah.
Very small. Shame.
Here's another number for you.
9 million.
Right, 9 million.
8.8 million.
Yeah. Here's another number, 750,000. 750,000. That's the number of people that voted for de Blasio in the last mayoral campaign. So, what do we need to do? And that's what I'm going to show you, okay?
So in a city of 8.8 million people, only 323,000 voted for him in this primary election, and roughly 720,000 voted for him to become mayor. So that means they're not doing their job of getting everyone to vote. And that's the problem, because New York needs to vote.
Okay, so according to our agenda, today we want you to consider how do you go about as a volunteer for Akeem Browder for Mayor campaign. Well, what we have approximately as of today is 35 days until election day, approximately, give or take a couple of days. And for those people who are interested, we talk about the Green Party platform. You can go to that website. Okay, and you will see in a lot of Akeem's literature with respect to the campaign some of the issues that we're talking about. Social justice, homelessness. There's approximately 600,000 people who are in shelters who, because they don't have a stable residence, who are unable to vote. That's a political constituency. That 600,000 could perhaps have the fate of the winner of this next mayoral election. That's 600,000 people. Affordable housing. That's what Akeem alluded to today. He talked about what does it mean to be affordable, and how do we go about creating policy that makes housing in New York City affordable. Real affordability, not just using the term, because we know affordable is is a relative term, so we need to put some meat and potatoes to that term, affordable housing. Green transportation, green buildings, and creating jobs. As Akeem talked about a little bit, he talked about how do we go about incorporating ecology and ecological economics into our infrastructure here in New York City. And education. How do we get parents back involved into the school governance process, where principals and parents are working together and teachers are working together in order to create effective classrooms, and creating conscientious classrooms where all students, regardless of socioeconomic status, can actually learn in the classroom. And then our fifth point, expanding and improving Medicare for all, HR 676. The state, the governor and the mayor say they're about increasing health care and Medicare, but what does that look like? We're hearing a lot of these semantics and a lot of terminology, but there hasn't been any effort put into creating some policy. Okay, so as a volunteer, today you were given a volunteer availability form, and there were some areas that we identified that I would like you to consider. Number one, phone banking, calling voters and persuading people to donate or volunteer, spread the word about the candidate. That's one of the things that we hope that if you plan to volunteer that you would help us do. Encouraging people to donate. Even if it's $27 or $15, the resources that we attain through the campaign have to go towards what we do as a campaign, and we encourage whatever you can give to help us. Canvassing subways, neighborhoods, and public places. This is what we plan on doing. What's going to happen is we have borough volunteers, captains, in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, Manhattan, and Queens. And these borough captains will be coordinating with our volunteers. So there are some things that you can actually do. For instance, when people are going to the subway in the morning, on certain occasions, Akeem will be out there with volunteers meeting and greeting people who are going to the subway. And this usually happens between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. Also in your neighborhood, hosting parties within your apartment or your home where people can actually meet the candidate and you can talk about the issues and how you're going to mobilize with respect to the different boroughs and the different assembly districts. And then last but not least, public spaces, library who are going to every day, the neighborhood bodega, okay? The neighborhood store where people get many of their essential items. These are places where we hope to have you as volunteers share information, which will talk about the candidate and his platform. We'll have posters and flyers. We'll also have specific literature that speak to citywide issues. And then also there may be some issues in your respective borough in which may relate to you as a Bronxite, or you as a Brooklynite, or you as a Manhattanite, or you as a Queensite, or you as a Staten Islandite. There may be some issues relative to your community. Akeem is open to listening to those things and talking to you about how do we go incorporating that into our policy in the future. And these two websites are very important. Anyone who can, you can check your voter registration right online. This is the web link here. You just go to this web link right here. It asks you to put in your first and last name and your address, and will actually spit out to you whether you're registered to vote or not. This is key with respect to us meeting the deadline for voter registration. Key.
So is everyone here a voter registered to vote? Yep. So those of you that are in, we urge you, because we have up until the 13th of this month, which is approximately 4 days, I think. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, approximately 4 days.
And so we need those that are passionate about New York, that understand that we need to change New York. We need you to vote and understand that where you can vote, how you can vote, reach out to us so that we can get to you where you are, so you don't have to go out your way to go to the post office to get one of those forms. We'll do it for you. Just contact us.
And also, polling site locator. This particular website, you can actually put in your name and your address, or specifically your address and zip code, and it will spit out where you're polling, where you go to vote. That is also critical. So for those people who are not sure where they're supposed to vote, between now and November 7th, they can go to this website and actually put in their zip code and address, and it will tell you where you need to go.
And that website, just so those that don't know or can't see, it's called nyc.pollsite.com/search. Find out where your nearest voter site is so that you can actually go there November 7th of 2017, this year, to vote.
Or any time before, even to verify, because what's going on right now is we don't want you to be frustrated with respect to getting to the place that you're supposed to vote. Again, that's nyc.pollsitelocator.com/search. Okay, so the key to our strategy is for us to identify those election districts and assembly districts within the 5 boroughs where there's a high number of registered Democrats and voters in general, and we want to specifically persuade them to look into Akeem's platform and the issues that he's facing as mayor. And what the whole idea is that we want to let them know that yes, he is a Green Party candidate. However, on November 7th, they can vote for anyone in that category that they want to. They can vote for anyone in that category that they want to for mayor.
You don't have to vote party line just because that's all we know. We can start learning so that we can change our class citizenry in New York towards better, smarter individuals. As long as you're informed, you are prepared to make a proper decision.
And so with respect to the assembly districts within the state and specifically New York City, there are many assembly districts in Queens and Brooklyn. They have a large number of assembly districts in Queens and Brooklyn. Manhattan and Staten Island have a smaller number of assembly districts, and the Bronx is pretty much...
What does that mean, assembly district?
Assembly district is the voting district that the state allocates to each county. Now remember, we call them boroughs, right? We call Brooklyn, the Bronx, Manhattan, Queens, and Staten Island, we call them boroughs within the city of New York. But the way the state looks at each borough is as a county.
Yes.
So the Bronx is the Bronx County. Queens is Queens County, right? Staten Island is Richmond County. Manhattan is New York County, okay? And Brooklyn is Kings County.
Kings County, yes.
Right. So Kings County, which is quote unquote where the mayor is from, has a large number of assembly districts, and I'm going to actually illustrate to you how the assembly districts break down, okay? So, in each of the boroughs, okay, Manhattan County specifically, when we look at the assembly districts, the key thing that I want our volunteers to understand is that there is a pretty generous number of people who are from both parties. Okay, so you have just as enough Republicans as you do Democrats. But in those working class communities, working class neighborhoods, there tends to be a more of a greater number of Democrats. So, let me show you. I'm going to pull out this for you. Bear with me.
No, so everyone, the gist of everything, what we're really trying to let everyone know is you have options. And knowing what those options, don't just vote because you know my brother's story. I mean, that might motivate someone to say, I want to change the system. And that's great. We need people to be passionate. And what drives that passion is usually when something bad happens. Let's not get to that point. I mean, realistically, I don't think any mother should have to bury their child unexpectedly. And in that case, no family should have to go through anything unexpectedly. We should know what is going to come to us. Our kids should know the law so that we can say, after 21, when your frontal cerebral cortex is developed and you have that understanding of what you want to be doing and what your decision-making process is, you can think for the long run. And now that you can think, now that we've taught you, and now that you're educated on all the options and responsibilities you have, a better New York means a stronger New York, which adds to a stronger U.S. Outside of America, we're looked at as a joke. This is a technological world that we live in right now, and yet we're behind the curve putting our kids through school, 13 years, sitting in class as a daycare basically, and yet what are we learning? 13 years later, our kids are working at Dwayne Reed or McDonald's because we couldn't afford to put them in college. Why should we have to afford to give the same education throughout everywhere? Why should we have to afford it, and if we can't, our kids suffer? That doesn't sound like we care about our kids. Actually, what New York has been showing for the longest is we don't care about our kids. If we did, we wouldn't be locking them up at mass rates through the school-to-prison pipeline system. If we cared about our kids, we wouldn't penalize them when they hop the turnstile. We would educate them and provide for them. If we cared, we wouldn't take our parks away from them and tell them, make way somewhere else. If we cared, we wouldn't actually do the homeless system in New York, wouldn't use them as a way to make money and then not give to them. I mean, in New York City, we have one homeless shelter for kids. I'm not going to call them adolescents, teenagers, or any of the like. They're kids. In my eyes, kids are kids. They should be able to grow up as kids, and yet there's one homeless shelter in New York City. We don't promote the thought that these kids, and that one homeless shelter only houses 5,500 kids. Yet there's New York City, a third of our population are homeless, and yet majority of them, or an overwhelming number of them, are kids.
5,000?
5,500.
One building?
In one shelter.
Kids?
Kids.
Okay.
And so, New York City has a problem with transparency about even talking about who we are running this city for. If it's for our future, then we need to get prepared for our future now. And it's not things that takes years to do. When we say, I want to shut down Rikers, I came out with a 3-year plan to shut down Rikers. Inevitably, if you'd say, where do we put these criminals? Well, one, let's re-educate on verbiage. Because they are not criminals, because in New York State or in the United States, we are innocent until proven guilty. Mm-hmm. So how are you a criminal? You are alleged of a crime. If I caught the gun in your hand and there's a person dead on the floor by your bullet, you are still innocent until proven guilty. It might not sound fair, but that's what we premise the United States on. And yet, I know you want to get to yours. I just want to say, the way that we shut down and stop making New York citizens pay for people to be in hellholes like Rikers Island, and yet we're paying extreme amounts, and look at the place that they're living in until they're considered innocent or proven guilty. So 3 years shutting down real easy. We have places in the Bronx on Williamsbridge Road. There's a facility on Williamsbridge Road for dedicated to mental health, right next to our church, Harvest Fields. And that place is at 17% capacity. It's not full, nowhere near full. And so, 68% of the Rikers Island are considered mentally ill. That's where we're going to put them. Why are they not getting the services that they need to be better and healthier, and yet we're putting them on Rikers with the remainder of the population? So that's 68% of the population. 20% of the population is considered non-violent criminals or alleged criminals, non-violent offenses. So they're sitting on Rikers in a gladiator school in hellish conditions, not proper food or shelter or help or services, and yet they could be on the streets for non-violent crimes like jumping a turnstile or sleeping on park benches or open canister. Or even, what we don't realize, detention. We're locking up kids after 3 times detention. We're playing baseball, strike 3, you're out. And now you're detention, so the public school system, who has affiliation now with our police departments, are building a police department in every school based on this system of, we need metal detectors. Who mans metal detectors? If we need metal detectors, then you're saying we need police officers, 2 police officers with a reserve 2 for when they need break. So that's 4 officers, and if you have 4 doors in your school, then that's 8 officers per door, and that means also that they now have a right to